We combine tailor-made speed, maximum forgiveness, and a new level of fitting to give you more distance from more of the face. Unlock another level with the all-new QI35.
Yeah, that's the one.
From TaylorMade.
James, thanks for joining us inside the ropes. Appreciate it. It's an exciting time. The Masters is just around the corner. We'll get to it momentarily, but as much as you and I have talked hockey over the years, we've seen you in Winnipeg for not only the Jets, but the Blue Bombers with the TSN coverage in the CFL. I think, is it fair to say golf might be even a little bit higher than all of those now?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to say it. I'm probably contractually obligated to say that hockey's my number one thing, but golf is my favorite sport. And I will say I'm 100% obsessed. I always love golf. And I would say kind of golf, hockey, football have always been kind of my three together, my favorites, and at different times, but since my kids got old enough to like start playing a lot, I've gotten obsessed over the last 5 years. I think everybody who knows me would say that. And not that I'm great at it, but I am definitely obsessed with it. So, and I will watch, it's crazy. I will watch, whatever's on Golf Channel. I'll watch some US collegiate event, right? That means nothing. So yeah, I have a problem. The best kind.
Absolutely. So where did that obsession come from? Because I know you and I have talked about this a number of different occasions about why we both love the sport, but you think back to a young James Duthie, or you think now to where, as you use the word, the obsession has grown. What do you love about the sport?
This will probably be too long an answer for you, but I think, I fell in love with it, I think, watching the Masters as a kid. And, for young people listening to your show, the Masters used to be just Saturday and Sunday, the back nine, basically. You'd turn it on at 3:00 and the leaders would be on the 10th hole, which is crazy considering what we have now for coverage of all sports. And it just seemed like this incredible place that was so far away in my mind. I lived in Ottawa in the suburbs and, didn't travel much or anything. So, and then when I was, I never took lessons or anything. We didn't have a lot of money, but my dad bought me like one of those like sets of 4 clubs. And I would get up at 4:00 in the morning in the summer, and I'd walk 10 minutes to my friend Mark Ward, my best friend's house. I would throw rocks at his window to wake him up. We would take the OC Transpo public bus to this little muni called Pineview Municipal Golf Course. And kind of a dog track, no offense, Pineview, I love you. And we would sit on the first tee in the dark. And the sun, as soon as the sun came up, we would tee off. And the whole plan was, if the clubhouse was, between 9 and 10. And if we got through 9 before the pros showed up at like 7 or 6:30, then we'd walk off 18, and we just walk straight to the bus stop and leave and never pay. So that's what we did throughout the summer. And we were hacks, like I said, but I fell in love with the game then. I think I always loved it, but I had 3 kids in 4 years. You know what that's like. It affects your golf game. So I was only playing 5 or 6 times a year. And then the blessing of the lockout in 04-05 is I got to cover all 4 majors for TSN. And I think that sort of renewed my craziness. I got to go to St. Andrews last Open and see Tiger win the Masters. So a bunch of amazing things happened. And so I loved it. And probably 6 or 7 years ago is when I started to play a lot and kind of started to obsess about swing and, look at way too many YouTube videos and things like that all of us, 9 handicaps do. But yeah, I have a problem with it. You just can ask my wife. She'll tell you.
So you led me into that. Is the game improving at all?
I think so. I think my cap went up a couple of spots last year. You know how the pros, it's always really annoying when you hear like a news conference and a guy says he's hitting it really well, he's just not scoring. That's my story I'm sticking to all year. I have a pretty crappy short game right now. Chipping, I'm a pretty good putter, but I am the victim of way too many. I'm like the poor man's Victor Hovland, who's gone through 25 coaches and literally watches Instagram videos like the rest of us.
Right.
And now I have 19 different chipping techniques that I'm trying. And so I was a bit of a mess on that last year. I would say I was probably a 5 handicap on driving and irons and probably a 20 on chipping. So it evened out at 9 or 10 or something like that. But I have a lot of hope for this year, like I think most people do when they start a new season.
So some of the rounds that you've played in the past, or some of the places you've been in the past, what are some of the James Duthie highlights?
I love Cabot Links, Cabot Cliffs. One of my favorite places in the world to go. I've been blessed to go. We went for about 5 years in a row once. If you haven't got out there, Bri, it's amazing.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say it's unreal now that in Canada, that's one of the most talked about places for golfers from anywhere, isn't it?
yeah, for sure. And I just realized when I started with you, terrible, that Manitoba is the only place I haven't played golf in the country, and that is a faux pas that I have to correct. And that's not by, it's just the fact that every time I go out there, it's hockey, it's wintertime in the playoffs, or I'm doing a Bombers game in November, and so I haven't, and I've driven across Canada a few times, but I've never stopped and played there. And so I got to rectify that at some point. I got to get out for like a Bombers game in the summer or September and maybe Labor Day and work in an extra day and play because I know you got
Jets
some.
go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
if
For
they
sure.
get to the
We'll be out there
conference
for
final or
sure.
the Stanley Cup,
Yeah, and a
doors
really
open
good
right
chance of that
there.
happening because I've heard amazing things about golfing in Manitoba, and it's one thing I want to do. Now, I buried the lead, of course, to your question. This is what a jerk I am, by the way. This is what I do. Sometimes you go out and you play with two random guys,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and join up with a group, and or playing in a scramble. And the thing I always do, I always ask the question you asked. I say, like, what's your favorite course you've ever played? And they'll always go, whatever. They'll say Cabot or maybe like a Wooden Sticks here in Ontario or one of the fine ones in Manitoba or something in BC. And then they'll ask me, of course, what about you? I always just go Augusta National. And it's the greatest jerk face comeback you can make, but I always do it.
But if you've got it in your back pocket, how do you
I
not
think
use
you
it,
have
right?
to.
Like,
I think you have to
really?
use it, right? I think you
Yeah.
have to. And so I won the draw. I guess 8 years ago. It was the year that Danny Willett won and Jordan Spieth put two in the water on 12.
Okay.
And for your listeners who don't know, there's a draw on the Monday. Well, the draw actually happens on the weekend, but every Monday after the Masters, weather permitting, about 30 guys get to play the course. And it's the coolest thing in the world because it's the Sunday pins. And it's, besides the tee boxes, you play from the members' tees, which back in like 97 when Tiger won, fairly, they were about the same, but with all the technology, some of the boxes are 150 yards behind where the members' boxes are. So a very playable golf course, but it's just such a surreal experience, standing in these, standing on the 12th tee or the 13th tee or 16 and sitting here going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. Back to when I was growing up, I didn't even dream I'd ever go to Augusta, let alone play Augusta. So, yeah, one of just the coolest experiences ever.
So you led me into it. I was going to wait a little bit, but hey, let's get into the Masters talk right here. You leave this weekend. It's coming up next week. You've done it for a number of years now. You've had a chance to play it once.
Mm-hmm.
What's that experience like when you get inside the gates?
It never gets old. And it's one of the few things. Look, I love doing the Stanley Cup final, the World Juniors. Like, I'm so lucky to do the events that I do, but there is a sameness,
right?
When you walk inside the arenas or whatever. Augusta is the exact same place, but we arrive usually on, well, it'd be like Sunday and go to the course usually Monday. And that first time I always walk the course on Monday and it never gets old. It's hard to describe. I always tell people that it's one of the few places in life that meets expectations. There's so many places you travel to, that you see on Instagram, and yeah, maybe they're as pretty as they are, or maybe your expectations get too high and it's disappointing. Augusta is, and almost every person I talk to that's been there says the same thing, that it somehow exceeds expectations. And I don't know what it is. It's just a magical place where everything's perfect. Even behind the scenes, everything is perfect. You go to Disneyland And behind the scenes, the guy who plays Winnie the Pooh's got his head off and he's smoking a dart, right? Augusta, behind the scenes, everything's perfect. All the parts that the fans, the patrons don't see, the media area, everything's perfect. I don't know what the heck their landscaping budget is, but there's never there's just never a twig out of place anywhere. And yeah, just the history that's there, it never ever gets old.
And it's more hilly than
Yeah,
what
that's
it
the first thing
seems,
most
isn't
people
it? Is that
notice.
fair?
I think that's the thing that most people notice is that it's gotten better with HD TV and 4K over the last decade than what you and I had when we were watching when we were kids. But the second hole is so far downhill. The eighth hole is so uphill. The ninth fairway to the ninth green is about 30, 40 yards uphill. As a matter of fact, when the round that I played with three other random media people, and there was a woman from the BBC, and she hit it long. So she was at the back of the green, and she putted it too hard, and it went off the green and down the hill. So she had to put like a 35 footer, and she ended up 98 yards away, something like that, for their next shot. So yeah, that's the thing. And right, Amen Corner is so low. It's the lowest part of the golf course, like 9, 10, 11, 10, 11 is so far downhill. So I think that's the thing that stands out to most people. The other thing that's just so cool is, they have archaic rules there, and that you can't bring your cell phone on the golf course. Things like that, which are frustrating at first, especially when you're trying to cover the tournament. Right. And we can't either. We're just like the patrons. But it's a really neat experience, because where in the world can you go today where there are 20,000 people and no phones, and everybody's just talking and drinking a beer and having a conversation? And I don't think any place in the world exists like that anymore. So I think that's part of the thing that makes it special too.
Now, when you've got your coverage for TSN, can you guys get out on the course after the fact? Like, obviously not playing, but if you're doing your stand-ups or whatever you're doing, or are you locked into, like, I know you've got your set.
Yeah.
Can you get around it all, or is there somebody?
Yeah, sure. Well, for sure. I mean, we have to, for Monday through Wednesday, I spend a lot of time on the golf course. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we do that bonus coverage where we're on the air for 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. Before CBS comes on, where we bounce around and show as much golf as we're allowed to show. And so I'm tied to the set there. Usually afterwards, I'll go out for an hour or something. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'll usually walk the front nine with the leaders, or if there's a Canadian involved. But basically, it's so hard to follow the golf tournament. We have to do an hour post show that you have to kind of watch it on TV. So most of the time, unfortunately, unless somebody's got a big lead, we're on our set watching the last few holes there. I went up and watched Tiger in 2019. I wanted to be there on 18 when he won. And kind of the coolest year in a weird way was COVID. It ruined every other sport, and it kind of ruined the Masters, but it was amazing for us because there was nobody there. So we could stand 5 feet away from the players basically when they were teeing off. On Thursday, I walked the front nine with Tiger Woods, and it was his then girlfriend, his manager, 2 course officials, and me. That was the gallery for Tiger Woods. And again, when will you ever see that again in your lifetime, right? So I hope that never happens again, but it was really cool that it happened once.
Speaking of once, and we've alluded to it, you've played it. Mm-hmm. I know the story, but you've got to share this for everybody on our social media channels here with Golf Manitoba. Tell me about James Duthie getting a chance to play Augusta and the preparation that was had.
So, well, first of all, I did bring my clubs that year. I brought my clubs for about the first 7 years. Once you win, you can't play for 7 years. And everybody on our crew had basically won. And so I thought my chances were getting better. Plus, technical people there that don't play golf. So you start to think that the same people come back to the Masters every year. A lot of them have won, that your chances get better and better every year. And so I thought my chances were pretty good. Sure enough, we're sitting in our office one day in the media center, and there was a guy named Lee. He's no longer with them, but he sort of ran the media center. He's got a green jacket, and I barely had talked to him at all. And he walks into the suite and says, "Hey, James, how's it going?" And as soon as he walked in, I knew. And he says, "You got plans on Monday?" And he hands me this letter, and it's just really fancy letterhead. "Mr. James Duthie, you're invited to show up at Magnolia Lane at, I think it was 8:34 on Monday." So I immediately went out and walked the course with Bob Weeks, who'd already played it, and tried to prepare myself. And Bob was giving me all this advice. But all the crew had to leave and take the flight the next morning. And so I was alone in the house, and I looked at my golf bag and realized I only had one ball in my golf bag. You have to think it's the second week of April. And back then I wasn't quite as obsessed I am now, where I go to the simulator all winter. I just would hang up my golf clubs in October and not put them down again, so where they're just all dusty, and I never checked for balls. So I'm like, well, crap. So the taxi driver comes and picks me up, and I'm like, I got to get to Augusta National, but I don't have any golf balls. And she goes, well, the only thing opens at Walmart. So we go to the Walmart, and all they had was Top Flight Hot XLs, which I hope they're not a sponsor of your program, but for like $10 a dozen. So I show up at Augusta National with a dozen Top Flight Hot XLs. And so that was kind of embarrassing. And then it's great. They give you a locker in the champions locker room. It's just the coolest thing ever. You go down to the range, and all the caddies are there in their white outfits. And I took my spot, and, they have these Titleists with the Augusta logo on them, Pro V1s, as the range balls. And so I kind of said to my caddy, I said, I had a little bit of a ball mishap today. And so I gave him the look, and he kind of rolled his eyes and turned around and looked the other way. And I just filled my bag up with these practice Pro V1s with the Augusta logo on them. But yeah, it was the most nervous I'd ever been on the first tee. I actually parred the first hole. I actually hit the ball really well all day, but I three-putted, I think, 12, 13 times not because, everybody says the greens are impossible. They're incredibly fast. But you have a caddy to read them. And quite often, I think it's more about where you place your ball on the green, because I would get on the green in regulation, but miss my spot and I had like 40-foot putts, and I would three-jack them all. I'd roll it 8 feet by, miss the comebacker, roll it 8 feet by, miss the comebacker. And I made a 10 on 10. I hit it in a bush. And I'd never even seen the bush on TV before. It's right of the green on 10. And then Rory McIlroy hit it in that bush a couple of years ago. And I was like, hey, that's my bush. That's the only other guy I've ever seen hit it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't my best round of golf, but it was just pure magic.
So did you keep a couple of those balls? Do you still have them?
Oh yeah. I actually only have one. I think I've given them away over the years to friends and such, but yeah, it was, man, it was really special.
So a couple to wrap up. James Duthie's best round of golf to this point is?
A quick story. We had a crazy last year, short winter in Ontario. I played my last round of golf on December 21st.
Wow.
And there's a place called Copetown Woods. Shout out to them in Hamilton. They stay open late. And I shot even par for the only time in my life. So it was the weirdest round. I was with my son and 2 other guys, and I just, one of those days where I couldn't miss. And I was 1 under on 17T, and I was like, holy crap. And I bogeyed
knowing where you were?
Yeah, I knew exactly where I was at that point. And bogeyed 17, and then big lake on the left side on 18. So I was nervous as heck, but I managed to get on 2 putts. So that's probably that's the best round of my life. I have a lot of 74s and 75s, but no 73s, and that was my only 72.
Here's your chance. You mentioned when someone says, where have you played? You'll throw the big card out and say Augusta.
Right.
Some of the most popular and best golfers you've had a chance to play with in your illustrious career so far.
Ooh. Well, I mean, some of the best ones are TSN guys. Jeff O'Neill's an awesome golfer. Not fun to play with because he just doesn't say anything. Miserable. Terrible partner to have. Just he gets on you when you suck. Wonderful golfer though. I go down to Turks and Caicos. The rounds of golf that I've played this year, I try to get down there once in a while, and I'm friends with Stephen Ames, who of course does really well in the Champions Tour. So I've gotten out a couple of times with him in Turks, which is an absolute delight. I think I was even with him after 3 holes, and I was just giving him the gears, and he shot the most effortless 65 I've ever seen. Like he didn't make any putts, didn't do anything, and I'm like, oh, he's not that good. And then I look at his card at the end of the day, 65. Oh God. So that would probably be. I mean, I've played with Kyle Dubas in a match with Jeff O'Neill and
Yes, I
Kyle
remember that.
Dubas. That was not pretty golf. That was a disaster by me. But yeah, besides that, I play with a lot of the guys, and Bobby Weeks, and yeah, good dudes, good dudes.
Last but not least, your dream foursome. Anybody in the world.
I've always said there's two answers to this, and one would be the golf answer, but my answer would always be my son, my dad, and my granddad. My dad's passed away. We only played one round of golf together. He was not a golfer, and I still can remember it vividly. I was probably 14, and he took me out just to be a good dad, and he was horror awful. It made me feel really good about my game. Like he hit it sideways the entire time. Dad was a boxer, not a good golfer. He played like he had boxing gloves on. My granddad I never met, but he was a radio guy. He had a radio show in Ottawa, and so I've always thought, my mom would always tell me that maybe, I don't know, whatever media, if there's such thing as a media gene, or the reason I got into media, that maybe I was like my granddad. So I always wanted to meet him, and my kid is now obsessed with golf as much as I am. So that would be my dream foursome.
Is he better than you?
Yes, he's. I think he's about a 4 or 5 now.
So it's over early.
Yeah, he started to beat me regularly. I'll beat him once in a while still.
Okay.
But he started to beat me pretty regularly about 2 years ago. So, jerk.
James, appreciate this. Thanks for doing it. And
My pleasure,
hey, we'll see what happens. Maybe in round 2, 3, 4, if you get
if I'm there,
to get out here.
Yeah, if I'm there, I desperately want to play out there. Like I said, I've heard a ton of good things, so I'd love to get out.
All right. Enjoy Augusta.
Thanks, buddy.